Thanks, Fiona, and thanks to all our speakers in the second session and the first session this morning. So as Fiona says, my name is Laura Connaughton. I'm the Head of Academic Services here in Maynooth University Library. I do want to specifically thank everyone who spoke this morning, and I don't know about everyone else, but I am feeling really proud right now listening to the way we've all collaborated and adapted over the past few months. Alan said at the start that strengths are magnified in a crisis, and that's clearly been demonstrated this morning, so thank you to everyone for that. So we're going to move on to the question and answer session for the next 20 or 25 minutes. I'm just going to ask any delegate with a question to include it in chat. Please say who your question is for, and then I will ask it. My colleague Catherine is also going to be keeping an eye on chat and will prompt me at the end if I miss any questions, as sometimes they can get lost in chat. So just before we get started, I just wanted to remind speakers that while a question may be addressed to one, the key aim of this seminar really is to share experience across the sector. So please feel free to pop into chat if you have any comments or anything you want to add in response to a question that was asked of another speaker. And of course, speakers can also ask questions. And then finally, when you are answering a question, just please remember to unmute before you start to speak. So we have one question so far in the chat, and that's from Philip Cohen. So I'm just going to read it out, and it's for the panel of speakers. So firstly, Philip just wanted to note thanks to all the speakers for such inspiring presentations. And the question is, what do they think is the single biggest opportunity for their service that has come out of this emergency?
Laura, can I come in?
Yes, Marion, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the fact that our staff, they really had an opportunity to showcase their creativity, and we definitely, people dipped their toes into let's say even look at the online storytelling. Like that was a big jump for staff to actually do that in some cases. So there was a huge building of confidence in that area, and using different technologies, and it's really after enabling our staff, and I do think it really has allowed their creativity to shine, and I think that is something that will really stand to us going forward. And I have to say, I know Alan mentioned it earlier on as well, but that he is so proud of library staff in this period. But I have to say, likewise myself, because I really think people actually stepped up to the mark.
Absolutely, Marianne. Anybody else?
Could I come in, Laura?
Yes, Helen, yeah.
Thanks. My video has been stopped. What Marianne said there, and just to, I think when we're moving forward, we will be thinking about the possibilities, what I mentioned about equality of access to information. Maybe we're going to be thinking maybe of a more global world, I think, as we move forward, and access, and maybe it'll also get publishers to have a rethink, etc. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. I think, Sandra, you wanted to come in there as well?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I think it's a follow-on from Helen's point. So I suppose moving our content and our events and programming online has, there's lots of challenges with that, and it's not quite the same as the face-to-face experience and that lift you get when you're in a room with people sharing an experience. But it has allowed us to reach way beyond the boundaries of our building, and that allows us connect with our diaspora and get right across the country, which we can't do based in Dublin. So that's an aspect that I'd really like us to keep doing when this is all gone away, that we can still reach out across the country and across the world.
Great. Thank you for that, Sandra. Any of our other speakers from this morning want to jump in on that?
I might just come in really quickly and echo everything that everyone has just said, but I suppose two things that we're thinking about, or rather that I'm thinking about, one internal and one external. Internally, I think we've learned a lot as certainly a library leadership team in my university about the connections that we make with our staff. So those brilliant people who are at home struggling because they have to do homeschooling and work full time and deal with their own sort of issues themselves. We've learned a lot about connecting together as a team. So we're hosting fairly regularly all staff meetings, which we just wouldn't really necessarily have the opportunity to do on a day-to-day basis in our library. It's paid dividends, and we keep saying that we need to keep that momentum going, even when we are sort of back together in the same building. And just the second thing that I would say is that a common thread that's come through a lot of our talks this morning is the issue of copyright. And again, the strengths and the weaknesses of our systems are magnified. It feels like we have copyright laws and restrictions that just don't help us do the work that we need to do. And I think it behooves us to sort of keep going, keep on that path to try and imagine a better world, I think.
Great. Alan, thanks a million for that. Aoife wanted to pop in there as well with a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Apologies, my internet connection.
Aoife,
yeah, I mean, opportunities there.
we
can you hear me
again now? Yeah, we just lost you there for
a second. Yeah. Apologies, the connection here isn't great. Can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little bit, Aoife, there. Do you want to try one more time?
Okay, last time. Yeah, a couple of opportunities, I guess. One is positioning within our organization. So it's really been an opportunity to show the value that librarians add, the skills that we bring to the table. Number one, and number two, collaboration across sectors. I'm not sure we have really explored that, but I think there's an opportunity there for librarians right across all sectors, and this has been fantastic, bringing us all together. But I think that's another opportunity that remains slightly unexplored. Thanks.
Great, Aoife, thank you very much for that. Okay, I'm going to move on to a further question, if that's okay. Sorry, now I'm just going to pull it up here. We just have a question here from Catherine Gallagher. Thanks, Catherine. So in terms of interactive information skills training for students, are there any other platforms other than Zoom that libraries are using, or techniques during sessions that are appealing to students? And I'd open that to anybody who wants to jump in.
I'm happy to kick that off if
Thanks,
that
Alan.
would be helpful. Yeah, so that's a great question, Catherine. It's a question that we're exploring in my university, and I know many others are as well. We are exploring, on the technical side, we're exploring things like Teams, Microsoft Teams that we're using, in particular in universities. Many of us have virtual, or rather all of us have virtual learning environments. And, you know, there are tons of different sort of platforms. And I suppose the real issue is taking a consistent approach to our instruction or to our sort of interactive engagements, rather than sending people off into all of these multiple different spaces. And we're having lots of conversations in our university about whether we really should be trying to do live sessions like we're doing here today. You know, there's benefits to that, or whether we should be front loading our efforts and recording sort of shorter snippets and flipping, if you like, our approach to teaching. And there is no right answer. There's benefits and drawbacks to all of them. But, you know, I was saying earlier that the difference between teaching face-to-face and teaching online, these are exactly the kind of issues that need to be thought through.
Great, thank you, Alan. Does anyone else want to add to that? I do see some other pointers in the chat. So Cork County Council are using Cadoo, also using VLEs, Blackboard Collaborate. So there's loads of opportunities there for different.
Laura, hi Laura. Sorry, could I come in for
yes, Dawn, yeah.
Just to say, we did look into all of the different options in terms of the meeting software, and we put together a guide which we made available to all of the public library authorities, primarily focusing on freeware, but just bringing in as broad a range as we could possibly do. So that is available. Also, just to come back to the previous point in relation to copyright, that has been obviously a really big issue for us, that and the price of ebooks and e-audiobooks, which is also an ongoing issue. And we have been fortunate in receiving some funding from the Department of Rural and Community Development to enhance the ebooks and e-audiobooks online collection. But as you know, it takes a very small amount will only go a very small distance with e-books and e-audiobooks averaging 45 to 60 euros per title in the general, and it's obviously worse when it comes to academic. So it does, I suppose the question is, given the current climate and given how successful the online presence has been and how widely it's been taken up, does this give us an opportunity to look at it as a broader sector and to look at seeing if we can do something to try and address the situation as a whole sector? And sorry, that's me ending with a question rather than answering a question.
Does anyone else want to jump into that, Joan's point there? Joan, maybe it's too big a question to answer on a Thursday morning, but yeah, really, of course, anybody can add to comments there as well.
I think if I could come in, Laura, just there are a couple of ways we can collaborate as a sector in the whole area of copyright licensing, open access, sharing expertise, and even things like policies around what our physical libraries should look like when we do return to work. You know, there are small things we can do in the interim.
Absolutely. Great, thank you, Aoife, for that. I'm just going to ask everyone, if you want to turn on your video, you're more than welcome to now, just so that we can all see faces if you want to ask a question or add in any comments. I'm going to move on to a further question, if that's okay with everybody. Just a few coming in here on the chat. So this was from Breda, and it's a question for the academic librarians. So just wondering if there are plans within the sector to connect and support each other as we forge ahead and look to the changes that need to be made for the coming academic year. I'm going to throw out that to my colleagues.
Again, don't want to be the sole voice of that. We should, first of all. I think that we are such a supportive community anyway, that I think it happens in a very informal way at lots of different levels. I mentioned the library directors and the IUALG group in particular, but also obviously within the Institutes of Technology as well. I know that they're having regular and frequent conversations together. I know certainly my colleagues across the university who sort of operate at the same level that I am are in constant conversations together. The Connell group in particular for the universities have done stellar work. I didn't mention this in my talk, but collectively the Connell group of university libraries have partnered with An Post to devise a system to offer to those students who are moving away from, in our case in Cork, we have a lot of students who are going back home, their final exams are finished and they are bringing with them our library books that they have out on loan. We've been able to collaborate. My colleague Anne Byrne, who I know is on the call, has done stellar work in working with An Post to devise a system for students to not be out of pocket, but to return those books back to us. So, you know, it's happening in sort of small pockets of innovation around that. But I know Cathal and others, colleagues, will have other things to say as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alan, I keep thinking back to your point in your talk about our strengths being magnified. And I think as a group, we're always very collaborative and help each other out, and I think now more so than ever it's becoming very clear that that's absolutely the case, and it's been really useful, particularly over the last 2 months.
Laura, can I just make an observation there too? There is one group that we all are or can be members of, which is the Library Association of Ireland, because we're members of in different groups which represent our sectors, but the LAI will, I'm sure, play a very important role in all this too.
Yep, absolutely. Anybody else want to make a comment there on that?
Laura, Joanna from AIT, can I come in there?
Hi Joanna, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think what Alan, or all the speakers there, is hugely relevant. Alan giving the example of a kind of a small area where there's collaboration going on, I think is really interesting. I think as a sector we need to think about it in a strategic sense as well and share information where say for example in the universities or the IoT sector or the libraries, obviously the public libraries will be different, but making sure that we're getting seats at the table at the right places where decisions are being made around scenario planning for what the new term looks like. I think that's really important, and sharing where we feel people are going on things as well, within reason obviously, but I think that that sense of our kind of strategic approach. And there's also conversations happening certainly in the TAEA libraries group around what's the cost of this to libraries, and that when discussions are happening around budgets, and we all know there's serious cuts coming, you know, that anything that revolves around remote teaching and online learning obviously needs the resources to support it. So I think library has a huge part to play in that conversation to make sure the expectations that are given to students around the way learning will work is actually real and embedded into the way reading lists are assessed and all this kind of stuff. I also think there's a big conversation around OERs, and that will also feed into the open access conversations at the research level as well. So there's an awful lot of stuff as a sector or within the sector in the kind of key different groups of academic or public or whatever. A lot of information could be shared to make sure that we're being really purposeful about the next steps and our voice in that.
Absolutely, Joanna, you've raised some really important points there, definitely. Great. Would anybody else want to make a comment on that? If not, I actually have I do have a question for Michelle Breen, if that's okay. I was really interested to hear about the virtual reading room. Michelle, if you're still there, could you give us a little bit of information on that? Is Michelle still here? Perhaps not. Maybe not. Maybe not here at the moment. Okay. We'll move on. Has anybody else got any more questions there for us? For any of the speakers this morning? Loads of comments in the chat, so I hope you're getting to read them. I'm glancing over the most of them. Hopefully I haven't missed a question. Okay. Any further questions? Okay, we have a question from Susan. Thanks, Susan. It's a question for Sandra. So as well as capturing websites to reflect the COVID experience, are podcasts being captured, Sandra?
So I think not, Susan. We would flag that sound and video. What we try to do is put the right thing in each institution and to work in a network to make sure that everything is being captured. I'm not aware of anybody that's capturing podcasts at the moment. I mean, I guess individually and organisations that put them out have local archives and records, but it's not something we collect. We might incidentally collect it as we're web archiving. So it's something I'll bring back to the team and ask them as well.
Great, thank you, Sandra. Just a comment there from Rachel in Cork County Library that they have been using podcasts to document the COVID-19 experience. So that's great to know as well.
Brilliant.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Sandra, for that. I have just another question from Cathal, and it's for all the speakers. So, will staff, is that, sorry, I'm just doing it properly. So about skills that staff need going forward in this normal, as we call it.
Yeah, I suppose if I can come in there, Laura, just to say that, and I'd be particularly, for example, interested in hearing a little bit from Eileen Kennedy in Galway. I mean, one thing that struck me, and all the panel indeed, is the we always talked in interviews and so on about flexibility and how flexible are you and all the rest of it. I mean, I think we never thought that flexibility would be tested this way. But do the panel see, you know, are there particular skills that we'll be looking for now from staff in the future, given that I think one of the things we're going to take away from this is to have a higher level of preparedness for this kind of switch. And even though we obviously, as you can tell from all the examples and so on today, we did it very well, I just wonder, is there something in particular people will be looking for in the future? And for example, just going back to Eileen maybe to start, I mean, like even her own journey from to become what she is, I can't even remember her title now, but it's very impressive. You know, for people like that to be working in libraries, and is it more of that kind of thing we're looking at, or what other skills as well? Because I know even Maynooth, you know, if you like, some of the inverted commas ordinary stuff we did and having to do now, like book ordering, has required a new way to get it done in the current circumstances.
Yeah, I can definitely jump in there. It's digital experience developer is my title, which I think kind of means that I can do a lot with regards to what's happening right now in the current environment, since we're all digital at the moment. Gosh, I always say that learning how to learn is probably the biggest thing that people are going to need. I mean, we're all self-teaching ourselves right now. I never used Zoom before this pandemic hit, but you know, we've all kind of risen to the occasion and gotten comfortable with all this technology that we never have had access to before. So that flexibility itself, I think, is the biggest thing that libraries are going to need. Just being willing to teach ourselves new things, jump into new areas where we never had to before, and kind of redefine what the role of a library is. I mean, it's always been an open place where people can acquire knowledge. So acquiring knowledge is going to be all kinds of new things now. Acquiring knowledge could be making a 3D print. It could be learning how to keep yourself safe. It just, you know, it could be spotting fake news. It just is so broad now. And just that adaptability is going to be the main skill that librarians have to have. And it's something that this is proven that we all do have.
Right, thank you, Eileen, for that. Does anybody else want to comment there on Cahill's question?
Laura, I'll just come in too and say I do think that just taking, continuing on from Eileen, how we all have had to learn things quickly, like how to use Zoom, etc. And I'm no different in that regard. But I do think enthusiasm and a culture that promotes exploration will be key to moving forward. I think libraries are good at that, but we may even have to be more getting that exploration and innovation out there, and just enthusiasm also carry us a long way. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. Absolutely. And that's all mirrored in the chat here. Actually, I'm just reading curiosity, openness, collaboration, flexible, adaptable, all those words that we are, thankfully, and we will continue to be going forward on this. So anyone else I have one more question if anyone else wants to add a final point to Cahill's question there.
Well, in the health service, we have found that, you know, I spoke about evidence and digital, they're kind of our core areas, but we don't have enough skills amongst our staff when it comes to digital and learning new technologies. And that's something I need to grow either within our existing staff or bring new people in. And other traditional skills like critical appraisal and advanced searching, that's not going to go away. And other things like project management, I think, is really important, and being able to plan operational activity in a very fast-paced environment has been very, very useful too.
Great. Thanks, Aoife. And actually, you've kind of led us a little bit in towards our next question, which was from Joanna. And Joanna just asked if the panelists could comment on managing staff, CPD and development. So maybe I'll open that out to the speakers. Sandra, you want to come in? Yeah.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, so I mean, it's really a follow-up to the last question and then moving into the new one. So all those things that you would want people, the positivity, the adaptability and the kind of openness to things, very hard to quantify or you know, qualification for them on your CV, and you really learn them when you're in a tested situation. And I suppose everything that we have learned now about managing during a pandemic, probably the next crisis will be something completely different. But then the sideways point, I think, is using this time where you can to do online learning connected with the job and so on. So we have a program in the library where we've identified a series of resources and courses that we thought would be really useful for people. And in a mix between coming back on site and working remotely, there might be a gap and a space for people to take advantage of that now while they're working from home. Another thing I think it's really, really important to stress is that sort of a negative feel or a pressure about that is really counterproductive, because many people are working from home in different situations and with different responsibilities and stressors and so on. So I think that idea of learning new skills and new courses and stuff during this time has to really be an opportunity rather than a feeling of failure if you can't do it because you are too busy minding the kids, the pets, the parents, or just trying to get by.
Absolutely, that's great. Thank you, Sandra, for that. Someone else wants to jump in there? Marion?
Laura, can I come in there? I would say there has been opportunities within the last few weeks for staff training, and I know in Kildare, a lot of our staff, they really did engage in sort of a heavy CPD regime, and we've been documenting that, and I know my colleagues have as well. But just going back to technology and how that will enable a wider dispersal. I suppose the LGMA put on a town hall style training event there last week, and there were nearly 500 people that actually attended that from all around the country, and it was a morning session. Now, if you look at the logistics of that would not normally, it wouldn't be possible to do that. First of all, the size of that group, if you looked for a venue for that, so I think it's actually allowing us to use technology. I suppose because we've gone into these areas now and we're seeing the benefits, that can accrue. I think that's, and this, like if you actually look at Zoom here now today and this event, I think this will actually enable far more CPD and tailored CPD as well. And I suppose I'm conscious as well, the back to work protocol that we will all we're all very aware of at the moment. So the induction for staff, all of those processes, like a lot of that now can be, let's say, automated, so it will have wider availability and whatever. So I think there are definitely pluses in the area of CPD.
Great, thank you very much for that, Marion. There's loads of pointers coming in on the chat, and just to let you know that the chat has also been recorded, so you'll have an opportunity to have a look back at this afterwards if you can't keep up with it all there. So we have time for one more question, everyone. I've nothing in the offing unless I've missed one, Catherine. But if anyone has one further question, and then we'll wrap it up after that. Okay, there is. Sorry, I did miss a question. Catherine has prompted me, and it's for Marion again. So will public libraries have the national news spread service available from the 8th of June?
Okay, so we'll be going back in a phased process, and I suppose all those phases are actually being ironed out as we speak. So I mean, like the LGMA and our health and safety officers are actually working through the process at the moment. And I'm sure, as you can appreciate, it's not a just open the doors, so you really have to evaluate the risks, everything. So initially, news spread will not actually be running in the beginning, and like that's it really is a step back, because it is such a fantastic service. And I mentioned the psychology of all of this earlier on, and it really is such a step back for us, but we do have to assess risk, and with that in place, news spread, the likelihood of that on the 8th now would be very unlikely.
Okay, Marion, thank you for that. Just one other question. I see there is some chat in the chat about it, but it was, I think it's particularly for Joan, and it's, could the LGMA share experience on how to do a town hall virtually? And that would be really useful. So there are some pointers there in chat, but I don't know if anyone wants to join in here and just give us an overview of it.
Well, I can, I mean, I didn't set it up myself. So I think Linda Fennessy from the team is still on the, or still attending. So she was directly involved. I mean, it was Teams. So, you know, if anybody wants, they can contact me and I can pass on direct details in relation to it. But it did involve a bit of work, but I don't think it was too complex, and we didn't really have too many technical issues on the day. You can't, there isn't a sharing screens facility, so you can show, you know, one person presenting on slides and things like that, but everybody else has to contribute through the chat. But it did work very well, I think. Just also to come back to the previous question about news spread, there is a sectoral committee meeting tomorrow, the Service Delivery Committee, and they're looking at the reopening and the possibility of agreeing a sort of uniform phased approach to reopening. And newspread will be discussed at that, but certainly, as Marion said, it won't be coming online on the 8th of June.
Okay. Joan, thank you for that. And I'm just as you were speaking, I see Linda has jumped in on chat and given a little bit more information on the town hall. So thanks a million for that, Linda. So everyone, that's the questions for this morning. Thank you so much for participating and setting some great questions and great answers, of course. And I appreciate all of that. So at this stage, I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Hugh Murphy.